A small coin from 1968 could be sitting in an old drawer, a forgotten tin box, or even inside a jacket pocket right now. And some collectors believe certain versions may be worth far more than most people could ever imagine. Before you dismiss this as just another old coin story, take a careful look at what you already own, because a single detail on a 1968 coin has surprised ordinary families before. And if stories like this interest you, consider subscribing, because many people only discover the value of their coins after it's already too late. For years, most people treated old coins as loose change. They rolled around in car compartments, sat quietly in kitchen jars, or disappeared into storage boxes nobody opened for decades. In South Africa especially, many older families kept coins without thinking twice about them. They were reminders of another time, bus fares, corner shops, old pay packets, and days when a few cents still meant something. The 1968 coin was one of those ordinary pieces people barely noticed. Nothing flashy, nothing that screamed wealth, just another coin from another year. Or at least, that's what many believed. Because over time, collectors started noticing something unusual about certain 1968 coins. Tiny differences, small marks, slight variations in metal, lettering, or strike quality. Details so subtle that most people would never spot them unless they knew exactly what to look for. And that is where the story becomes interesting. Some collectors believe a handful of these coins were produced under unusual circumstances. In rare situations, certain batches may have been struck differently at the mint. Others appear to have survived in exceptionally sharp condition, almost untouched by circulation. And when rarity meets condition, values can change dramatically. At first, the prices sounded modest. A collector might pay the equivalent of $20, maybe $50, perhaps a few hundred if the condition was excellent. Nothing unbelievable, nothing that would make headlines. But then auction conversations began changing. People started talking about specific 1968 examples that carried unusual characteristics. One collector reportedly discovered an old coin mixed inside a family container that had not been opened in decades. Another claimed a coin dealer nearly overlooked an important mint variation until it was inspected under magnification. That's when curiosity around the 1968 coin quietly began growing. And here's the part many people still do not realize. Two coins from the same year can look almost identical to the average eye, yet one may be nearly worthless while the other could attract serious collector attention. Sometimes the difference comes down to a tiny spacing in the lettering, sometimes a weak strike, sometimes a missing detail, sometimes even the metal tone itself. That's why experienced collectors never rush when examining older coins. They study them slowly. Very slowly, because history has shown that hidden value often hides in the smallest details. Now you may be wondering, what exactly should you look for on a 1968 coin? Well, this is where things become even more fascinating. Some collectors focus heavily on condition. A coin with scratches, heavy wear, or damage may still hold sentimental value. But the truly sought-after examples often appear unusually clean. Sharp edges, clear text, strong images, minimal handling, coins that somehow escaped decades of wear. But condition alone is not always enough. There are stories about rare minting irregularities connected to certain 1968 pieces. In some cases, the lettering may appear slightly different. On others, the strike alignment may seem unusual. A few collectors even search for examples with peculiar surface textures that were never meant to leave the mint. Most people would never notice these details. That is exactly why valuable coins continue slipping through ordinary hands every year. And before I tell you about one discovery that shocked even longtime collectors, there's something important many people overlook. Old coins do not suddenly become valuable overnight just because they are old. Age alone means very little. What matters is rarity, demand, condition, and the story behind the coin. That combination is what creates collector interest. And in the case of certain 1968 coins, the story keeps getting stranger. One retired man reportedly kept a small collection of coins in a tobacco tin for nearly 40 years. He assumed they were ordinary keepsakes with little value beyond nostalgia. But when a family member encouraged him to have them examined, one particular 1968 coin caught attention immediately. Not because it looked beautiful, because it looked different. The surface showed unusual characteristics rarely seen on standard examples. At first, there was uncertainty. Then came further inspection. Eventually, discussions among collectors began pushing the estimated value higher and higher. What started as a coin worth almost nothing suddenly entered a completely different category. And this is where many viewers begin checking their own collections. Because hidden treasures rarely announce themselves. They sit quietly, unnoticed. Inside cupboards. Inside drawers. Inside forgotten envelopes. Sometimes for generations. Now, not every 1968 coin is rare. That's important to understand. Many are still common and carry only small collector value depending on condition. Some may sell for a few dollars. Others perhaps a few hundred at certain auctions. But every now and then, a coin appears that changes the conversation entirely. Collectors have spent years debating which 1968 examples are truly the rarest. Some believe only a limited number with specific features exist today. Others think several may still be hidden in private collections, never officially recorded. That uncertainty creates excitement. Because when nobody knows exactly how many exist, interest grows stronger. And here is something that surprises many people. Sometimes the most valuable coins are not the oldest ones. They are the coins nobody expected to become rare. That is why experienced collectors constantly revisit overlooked years like 1968. They understand that forgotten issues sometimes become the most valuable discoveries later on. Imagine for a moment opening an old family box tonight. You move aside faded papers, old photographs, maybe a few buttons or keys from another era, and underneath sits a coin you never cared about before. A coin from 1968. Would you even notice if it was special? Most people wouldn't. That's why stories like this continue spreading among collectors across the world. Now, there's another important detail that makes some 1968 coins especially intriguing. Provenance. In simple terms, provenance means the history behind the coin. Where it came from. Who owned it. Whether it remained untouched for decades. Coins connected to original collections often attract stronger interest because collectors believe they may have avoided tampering or cleaning. And cleaning, by the way, is something experts strongly warn against. Many people accidentally reduce a coin's collector appeal by trying to polish it until it shines. But experienced collectors often prefer originality over brightness. Even small cleaning marks can matter. So if you ever discover an old 1968 coin, handling it carefully could be extremely important. Because once damage happens, it cannot be reversed. Now earlier, I mentioned that values sometimes rise in stages. This is how it often happens. At first, collectors notice minor interest. Prices remain modest. Then a particularly rare example appears at auction and achieves an unexpectedly strong result. Suddenly more people begin searching for the same coin. Demand increases. Supply appears smaller than expected. That's when values can start climbing rapidly. And in rare situations, astonishingly. There have been stories of coins once ignored for years suddenly being discussed for thousands. Then tens of thousands. Then far beyond what ordinary people imagined possible. Of course, not every story is verified perfectly. The collector world is full of rumors, debates, and speculation. But one thing remains true. Rare coins have changed lives before. That is not fantasy. It has happened. And the reason these stories continue captivating older viewers especially is because many remember a time when coins were simply part of everyday life. Nobody thought about future collector value back then. Children spent them without hesitation. Adults tossed them into jars without care, which means some rare examples may already have disappeared forever. But not all of them. Some are still out there, waiting quietly, perhaps in someone's home right now. And there is one particular detail connected to some 1968 coins that continues drawing intense collector attention. I won't say it guarantees value, because nothing does. But certain combinations of rarity, preservation, and mint characteristics have caused extraordinary interest at specialized auctions. Collectors sometimes spend years searching for one authentic example. Years. Think about that. A tiny coin smaller than the palm of your hand. Yet serious collectors may hunt for it longer than some people search for houses or cars. Why? Because rarity creates obsession. And obsession creates value. Now, if you've stayed with me this far, the next part becomes even more important. Some collectors believe there are still unidentified 1968 variations sitting unnoticed in ordinary collections. That possibility keeps the mystery alive. Every time someone discovers an old container of coins, there's always a chance something unusual could emerge. Most discoveries happen completely by accident. A house cleaning, a family inheritance, a garage box untouched for decades. That is how hidden coins resurface. Not through treasure maps. Not through dramatic adventures. Just ordinary people rediscovering forgotten pieces of history. And the emotional side of this story matters too. Because coins are not only metal. They carry memories. They remind people of old wages, childhood purchases, family members no longer here, and a world that felt very different from today. Holding a 1968 coin can instantly transport someone back to another chapter of life. That emotional connection is one reason collectors become so passionate. But sometimes, emotion meets extraordinary value. And when that happens, even experienced collectors become stunned. Now let me tell you something many auction watchers quietly admit. The market for rare coins can be unpredictable. Values rise and fall. Interest changes. New discoveries appear. But truly exceptional examples often continue attracting attention no matter what happens in the economy. Because rarity cannot simply be manufactured. Once something becomes genuinely scarce, collectors compete fiercely for it. And this competition is exactly what has pushed certain rare coin sales into unbelievable territory over the years. At first, hearing about a coin worth a few $1,000s sounds exciting enough. Then you hear whispers about examples reaching tens of thousands. Then six figures. Then numbers so high they almost sound impossible. That's usually the moment people stop and say, "Wait, are you serious?" And surprisingly, in rare situations, the answer becomes yes. Now, before the final reveal, there is one more thing you should know. Some collectors spend decades studying coins and still miss important discoveries. That's how subtle these details can be. A rare coin may sit hidden among ordinary ones for years before someone recognizes its significance. Which means the next important discovery may not happen in a museum. It may happen in an ordinary home, perhaps even yours. So if you have old coins stored away somewhere, especially from the late 1960s, it may be worth taking another careful look before dismissing them. Because once a rare piece leaves your hands unknowingly, getting it back may become impossible. Now here comes the part that continues shocking viewers whenever they hear it. Most 1968 coins are not worth fortunes. That's the truth. Many remain ordinary collector pieces depending on condition and demand. Some may bring modest amounts, others slightly more. But in extremely rare and exceptional cases, where the right variation, the right condition, the right history, and the right collector demand all come together at the perfect moment, some collectors believe a truly extraordinary 1968 coin could potentially reach values so high they sound almost unreal. At certain auctions, rare coins have already stunned experts with record-breaking results. And according to some discussions within the collector world, a legendary 1968 example in near-perfect condition, carrying exceptionally rare characteristics, has been spoken about with potential figures reaching up to $55 million. $55 million for a single coin. Imagine holding something that small, yet valuable enough to change generations of a family forever. Now, whether every story reaches that level is always debated among collectors. Auction conditions, authenticity, rarity, and buyer competition all matter enormously. But what cannot be denied is this. People continue discovering valuable coins in ordinary places every single year. And many families still have old collections sitting untouched at home right now. That is why these stories matter. Because hidden value often survives in silence. So tonight, before you ignore that old jar of coins, before you walk past that forgotten drawer, before you throw away what appears ordinary, take another look at your 1968 coins carefully. You may discover nothing unusual, or you may discover something collectors have been searching for far longer than you realize. And if you enjoy uncovering hidden stories like this, subscribe and stay connected, because the next forgotten coin we talk about could already be sitting inside someone's home, waiting to be noticed.